This is the Benefits Buzz Podcast, your weekly pulse on what's happening in the world of employee benefits. Brought to you by your friends at WEX, who believe in simplifying benefits for everyone. Now listen up and let's get buzzed! Hey everyone, it's Benefits Buzz time. It's Eric Pilla. I'm joined by my co-host Kelsey Burgad. Kelsey, we are rocking our open enrollment series, aren't we?
We are, and I am so excited for this episode because I am here as 100% a learner in this one. I'm so excited to learn from what I would consider like my HSA investment guru. So here we go.
And something to aspire to. That's the best thing about being a podcast host is we get to do so much learning on these. I love it.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, it is. It's a cool thing. So, well, we're excited. We hope you're excited to learn as well. We've got a great guest. Zach Hansen is our guest today. Zach is a vice president of sales in the Southeast region here at WEX. But first of all, Zach, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Now, while we know you're a fantastic salesperson, honestly, that's not why you're on the call. You are on a call because you look at HSAs in a very particular way. Last week, we had a great conversation with some coworkers who really use their HSAs for medical emergencies and for medical costs on an ongoing basis. But you look at your HSA just a bit different. And specifically, you love the way in which you can use your HSA to invest. And so we want to dive into what does that mean? So before we get going, I want to know, how long have you leveraged HSAs? I think Kelsey and I feel like we're kind of, in our infancy stages of understanding an HSA and having one, but I feel like you've had a long, intimate relationship with your HSA. Am I right?
Yeah. So Eric, I've been with the company for 14 years. And we went full replacement, I believe it was in 2010 or 2011. So I've been an HSA participant for just over 10 years.
That's a long time. And I'm sure along the way you've learned a thing or two about it. So tell us about, tell us about why. Tell us about why you decided to choose the HSA when you were deciding the other. Obviously, a lot of us have options, and I'd love to hear why your mentality around why an HSA for you.
Yeah, so really, I looked at it, as just a tremendous opportunity to, set myself up for financial success in terms of, utilizing this benefit for transactions as they occurred, but also to kind of accelerate and kickstart my overall investment strategy. As somebody who, started out his career where he didn't really have a 401k for the first 5 or 6 years, of post-college work. When we got into an HSA, I looked at it as just another way to keep on socking away money for long-term financial well-being and peace of mind.
So I mentioned at the beginning that you're my HSA investment guru, and I was here to learn along with everybody else. So let's start by just explaining why I say that. I call you my HSA investment guru because I trust you because you have a lot of experience in investing. But let's start with like a baseline. What results have you seen from your investments with the HSA so people understand why you're on today?
Yeah. So Kelsey, I would look at it this way, right? This has been an opportunity for, me and my family. My wife and I, we are dinky doos, dual income, no kids, dogs only. And it's the kind of thing where, we've really just looked at this as saying, okay, this is something that we want for, long-term financial wellness and to give us peace of mind for medical expenses that will happen, as we continue aging. From an overall, return on investment, I've been, pretty lucky to time the market in the right ways in terms of missing the 2008 bubble burst. And we've had some pretty good returns in the overall stock market and that sort of thing. So I would say, holistically, we're probably at about a 7 or 8%, rate of return, for the funds that I've, put my monies into.
Nice.
That's awesome. And I think it's important for people to hear that too, right? Especially when the stock market maybe is in a volatile state, if you will.
It's a bear market. Yeah, it's brutal.
Right. to know though that over time, you I think everybody says this, right? But you shouldn't just focus on one blip of time. It's really over the entire lifetime of the money that you're putting in there.
Right. And Kelsey, I mean, from an overall strategy standpoint, I think that's why I've been so thoughtful in it in terms of like putting the extra money in there and letting the market do its work, right? It's setting myself up for 20 years of this. I'm able to reach overall financial security to have a couple $100,000 in my HSA long term, because that's really what I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up for in the future, to be able to use this on healthcare expenses as I get older.
Well, that's brilliant, because that's what we hear when you retire. Like the average couple has like a couple $100,000 in medical expenses, right? That just for them. So good for you. But I have to understand then, obviously you're trying to put as many dollars and you're investing them. And so maybe for a lot of people, like, okay, I can invest dollars. I don't have to sit there. If I can put them in an investment vehicle. How do you approach one, like what's your goal for investing? But then also, how do you approach medical expenses? Are you just doing it out of pocket, or are you using something else? Because I think that's the big question I had, is like, how do you manage that? And then how do you look at your HSA? If is it just an investment vehicle and that's it? So then what replaces it? Love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So Eric, from my seat, right away when I started, I looked at it this way. I want to make sure that I have enough money in my HSA to cover my deductible. So right away at the beginning of growing my HSA, it was like, okay, we have a $1,500 deductible. I want to make sure that I have that readily available in case anything did happen where it was a major medical expense. Now, that being said, I'm to the point now where if I go to the doctor and there's a $175 bill, like I will just pay for that out of pocket and save my receipts. So later on, if I want to take those distributions out, further down the line, I can then, reimburse myself for some of those transactions that might have happened in, 2016, 2017. I just keep a file, somewhere to save it to get myself reimbursed for, medical expenses later.
I don't think a lot of people even know that, and I've never really connected that even for myself, because I try as much as possible to pay out of pocket as well, because I want to invest, right? Like my goal is to be Zach Hansen someday. And so I don't know if I've ever fully connected that if I save the receipts, I can go back. So you can go back as far as you want, as long as you have those receipts and can prove that it was an eligible expense.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
And Kelsey, the other thing for me with my healthcare situation right now, I mean, the biggest thing that comes out of my pocket to get to look at my overall spend is contacts and maybe some dental care here and there. So for my wife and I, we take, probably about $1,500 a year and we put it into a limited purpose FSA. Well, what that does is that allows us to use that on our dental and vision expenses. And it frees up that $1,500 to then, be additional money that we can put into our health savings account. And it's, again, $1,500 a year over 10 years. Well, do the math. And now when you have it invested, you're going to get some pretty good return on it.
Yeah, let me ask you a bold question, Zach.
Yeah.
I think the limit in 2022. Well, one question is: are you contributing just for yourself? Are you planning just for yourself, or you have a spouse as well? Are you doing a family? So are you? I think it's 3650. I think it is in 2022. Are you like maxing out?
Yep. Right now, we basically are both having individual coverage. So she's got 3650 through her employer, and I've got 3650 through mine. So we're just trying to sock as much away, in our HSAs, and have those, again, healthcare transactions that we just pay for out of pocket.
That's another pro tip, because I think a lot of people don't pay attention when they're with their spouse, right? If you're both offered an HSA and you can do the single coverage, and it makes sense, you have to look into it, right? But look at those employer matches, because I'm guessing that's partly why you all do that, is because maybe both of your employers offer a match. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost $2,000 a year that we're getting from our employers, between the two of us. And, that's, again, just free employer money into our health savings account.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. There's such good tips here. Well, let's dive into your investing philosophy. I think it feels a little risky. I don't know. Like, I need these dollars for medical, but if you're going to go in on investing, I'd love to hear your approach. Like, did you at first do all of it? Did, like maybe it's about like, what did you contribute? Was it 50-50s, 50 investing, 50 in kind of this little kitty savings account kind of a thing? Or did you go all in? So that's the first question, is sort of your approach. And the double prong question is like, when you started thinking about investing, how did you go about doing research, or what were your thoughts around what you should invest in?
Yeah. So, obviously, getting a little bit of advice here and there from financial professionals, whether or not it's somebody who, you have a relationship with, who has helped you start up an IRA, or, they're your financial counselor or financial planner. They can help set you up for success. My overall approach was, Eric, just to treat this like an additional healthcare 401k. So my 401k, I've got it set for target date funds. So anybody who knows what a target date fund is, you pick your window in time that you want to retire at, and your risk in how the fund is calculated. It basically gets riskier earlier on as the target date is further away, and then as it nears, it starts to become less risky and more conservative, right? So I just really kind of aligned that to my 401k, and I said right away when I got into the HSA, I just said, okay, 2050 is my date. Boom, I'm just putting it in there, and I'll have that as my target date fund.
So that's a good tip for somebody who's maybe just starting in the investment world of HSAs, right? That's what I do. I'm not going to lie. I set it for my retirement day, which is so far away. But now that you've been investing for quite some time, what does your strategy look like now, and what resources and research have you put into that?
Yeah. So Kelsey, that was probably the start of it, and I was successful with that for 8 to 10 years. Now what I've actually started doing is just leveraging the platform a little bit more to get into what we call our self-directed brokerage investments. And that's where I take, from my seat, I've taken half of my HSA and put it into that target date fund. So there's, $20,000 in there. The other 20 grand I'm using as, self-directed brokerage, where I can actually select specific stocks and allocate funds to go into that. And really, from a diversification standpoint, I'm just looking at different sectors. I look at transportation. I look at consumer products. I look at energy. I look at biosciences, and really just kind of like take a few stocks here and there, try to make myself well-rounded. And there's some fantastic tools that are available on the site to be able to say, oh, if your risk tolerance is this, then you should put more into this area. So it's really just kind of like playing around and having a little bit of a test there, and then playing it for the long term. So track it over 2-3 years. Don't just look at it and say, oh, well, the last 3 months I've lost 18%. Well,
right.
Yeah, everybody has in everything.
Right. Right. Now, this is great. I'm hearing a couple of things that I love. One is, I love that you're still accounting for medical expenses. You're leveraging your limited FSA. You've got a game plan for those things come up, right? You're also saying that, like, hey, I'm going to look at this HSA as a retirement medical vehicle, right? Like, and so I say, okay, you don't have to be an investing savant. You can say, you know what, I want to invest in the 2050 target fund. You're like, like me, be like, oh yeah, that looks great. It takes care of it for you. Or if you want to get fancy and you're really keen to it and have a desire to it, like you can actually have the ability to research, find what investments you want to make, and play that market a little bit. So I'm loving that there's different levels here, right? Depending on how serious you want to get with it, which is great. If you do want to get serious, because there's going to be listeners who want to, what are you using? What apps are you using to track how your investments are performing? I'd love to hear. Is it something that's provided right within the tool? Is it something that you're using outside the tool? Love to hear your perspective on that, Sarah.
Yeah. So Eric, a lot of it is actually provided right inside the tool. So as you go through and you're allocating your various stocks, right? You can see the charts on, how Apple has performed. You can see the charts on how Exxon has performed. So you can kind of like research that really all by yourself. And then also it's just a little bit of, have some conversations with some financial professionals, ask them like what market sectors are doing well. pay attention just a little bit here and there. I'm a big, radio buff. So every once in a while I'll listen to specific podcasts and that sort of thing, or the Financial Times one. And basically be able to, just try to get little hints here and there around like, oh, consumer products, right? Like when we entered 2020, everybody bought a whole bunch of toilet paper. Guess what? That was Procter and Gamble was a great stock during that stretch. So
I would have never thought of that.
I need to listen to more of these podcasts, apparently.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I have one additional question. I think about just myself, and I have a 401k. I have an IRA, and I'm starting to invest in my HSA, right? For somebody who maybe is like me and maybe starting to dabble in all of these areas and really start to beef up their investment strategy, how did you go about that? Did you first focus on your 401k, then move to an IRA, then move to an HSA, or was it all at once? Like, how did you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey, it kind of morphs over time, right? With regards to how much disposable income in terms of your, paying yourself first for long term. Whether or not you're putting it into your 401k, what you want to make sure, from everything that I've always heard is at least make sure that you're getting the max match, right? To get the employer dollars that are being put in. Okay, you go that far, and then it was like, okay, well, I wanted to accelerate it and make sure that I had a nest egg in my HSA. So I put it into that next. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, there were additional dollars. Went back to up my 401k contribution to try to, keep on, building that for future success too.
No, that's great advice. And I think one thing when I keep applying it to myself, and hopefully everyone who's listening is doing the same thing, is like my nervous for investing was like, well, like in a 401k, those dollars are just tied up and you get penalized for taking them. I know a lot of the tools that we have, if you have an expense, you can just move those dollars from investment right to your account with no penalty as long as they're being used for medical expenses, which is here. So it takes some of that like nervous or like that some of that fear of like, oh no, like I put in too much in investing. You don't have to worry about that, right? Because you can pull those dollars if you do have something that would come up where you really need to pull on more than a limited FSA or even what you have out of pocket. So that was one little nugget when I thought about my scenario. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lean into this investing thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, Eric, is when you think about HSA contributions, if you want to at the end of the year, like say you're happy budgeting, $1,200 over the course of the year to be put into your HSA. Everybody's putting in $100 a month, right? You're going along and you get to the end of the year and you're like, okay, well, I actually have, $700 or $800 that are sitting here. I can make a post-tax contribution and then take the write-off when I'm actually filing my taxes, right? So then I'm getting the payroll deduction, but I'm also, coming in on the back end and putting a little extra money into my HSA, and I can take the write-off then. So
that's awesome, man. There was so much good advice in this, Zach.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what one last tip or piece of advice you had for our listeners, but I feel like that might have been it. But I mean, do you have anything else?
That's really good.
It was really good.
Everyone loved a little tax deduction. Well, Zach, so this has been so good. Thank you so much. I knew we'd have a lot to explore, and you did such a good job of just kind of laying it out for even Kelsey and I to understand. So we appreciate that, and it's a great way to think about your HSA if you are in a situation that you can look at your HSA that way. So we appreciate your perspective, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's so great about this tool is that it does change. Eric, you might use it as a financial savings vehicle now, and then in the future you want to actually take money out and use it for healthcare dollars. Kelsey, you can invest some, and then Gray falls down, breaks his arm. Yeah, there you go. Now you got to take some of that money back out.
Put that on me, Zach.
Now it's out in the universe. This is so good, Zach. Thank you so much. We super appreciate it. Love you coming on the Benefits Buds podcast. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
WEX is in the business of simplifying benefits for everyone. Now, although we certainly hope our podcast sparks some aha moments, like that was pretty cool, but of course we cannot provide legal, investment, or financial advice. And, well, therefore, nothing shared in this podcast should be interpreted as such. We encourage you to seek out appropriate professional advice regarding your plans. Hey, congratulations! You made it through our disclaimer. Thanks